Hello, and welcome to Making Sense of It. I am Mona Duncan, your moderator. Do you ever wonder why you do the things you do? Do you ever wonder, if I could just be a little bit more content, a little bit more happy? Well, this program is for you. It is our gift to you from the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, where each week we have a member of our staff to present something about Dr. Glasser's concepts, and more importantly, how they use it and how it is effective in their lives and the lives of those they work with, whether it's as a teacher or a consultant or a parent or just whatever. So thank you for being here. Our guest today is a newbie, and I am so excited about this. I have been familiar with his work, but have not had one-on-one interaction with him before. And today it is Ivan Honey, and he is in the grand country of Australia. And his topic today is teaching the world choice theory. It's simple and proven choices to get happier. So, Ivan, you ready to tell us how to help us learn how to be more content and happier?
Ready to go, Mona, and thank you for that very kind introduction. And before I start, just a call out to our American coordinators, Nancy Herrick and Dr. Scott Delterio, and our Canadian coordinator, Kevin Hanna. So I'm just so delighted to be with you today to share with you about the Get Happier project. And I've been working as a psychologist now for nearly 45 years. And during this time, seeing many people, seeing a lot of suffering and pain and sadness, I've always been looking around for the most effective approach to help my clients get happier. And fortunately, back in the 1970s, I came across a man by the name of Dr. William Glasser, and I've worked with him, been a colleague of his for many years. And over time, we've been able to adapt his choice theory into a project which can be understood by anyone, to simplify the ideas in such a way that we bypass the academic language and get down to the nitty-gritty, I suppose, of what this actually means in the lives of people. When my clients come, they don't want sophisticated, clever information. They just want to learn how to get happier. And so the quickest and most effective way to do that is something I'm constantly and continuing to explore. So let's move on, have a look at our workshop outline today. I'm not sure how far we'll get because I've presented this sort of information many times at conferences and workshops, and we'll probably get as far as just understanding the basics of what we're doing here. First of all, what is the Get Happier project? Secondly, what is choice theory? Where does this originate from? And what is happiness? That's the key question we're all wanting to know the answer to. If you go to the media, they'll tell you, get happier by buying our product. It's going to help you feel safer and healthier. You're going to have more friends. You're going to feel more powerful. You'll have more choices. You'll have more fun. But Dr. Glasser, and indeed modern psychology, is helping us understand that this sort of pleasure principle is a very limited way of understanding happiness. So why the Get Happier project? Where did it emerge from? What is the mental model behind the project? And summary of the program content. We might get onto a bit of this today, and then maybe on another occasion look at some of the exciting things that are happening in some of the Get Happier schools. On the right-hand side of this screen, you'll see the teachers of this project. And this is a family of dragsters and their friends in a little town, and they tell stories, and you find out all about the dragsters through their adventures. And they teach the basic principles of choice theory, and the children learn them. They love the dragsters, and they're such an important part of the program, as we'll discover. So first of all, let's start simply. What is the Get Happier project? Very simply, it's a new and positive framework to teach and learn the skills for mental health and happiness. And you're going to see the words teaching and learning cropping up quite a lot in these slides, because Dr. Glasser, as many of you know, started off with an approach called reality therapy, which of course is still a wonderfully powerful approach we use with our clients, a process of self-evaluation to help people learn to make more effective choices in their lives. But then he developed an approach called choice theory, and he developed a mission statement. And many of you know what this is. It's called to teach choice theory to the world. Now, he's not sort of saying to counsel choice theory to the world. We don't have enough counselors to do that. But he's talking about teaching. And we'll start to understand this more as we go through the slides. So what's it all about? And here we have the family of dragsters. Let's start from the left. It's about resilience. We're all going to encounter challenges in our lives. How do we bounce back in a way that not only helps us survive, but helps us learn from these incidents and things that happen in our lives to move to a happier, more content and meaningful place? It's about great relationships. We know that the way we relate to other people will either increase the happiness in our lives or decrease it. So teaching those skills is critical. It's about getting happier. As we'll see later, Dr. Glasser aligns happiness with mental health. And this is a huge issue in the modern world. Self-esteem. How do we feel good about ourselves? What are the strategies and processes we need to work on very regularly in order to maintain our sense of self-esteem in a world where not everyone is concerned about your self-esteem? As I often say to my clients, no one wakes up every morning and says, how can I make Ivan Honey's day a happier day? That's just not the way the world works. We need to take responsibility for that. And unless we know the skills to do that, no, we're just left hoping that someone's going to do something nice for us. Creative problem solving. Everyone's got problems. We've all got problems, but how do we solve them in a creative and effective way? This is the key issue. Last but not least, emotional intelligence is the word that's been coined from Dr. Daniel Goleman. And this is all about emotions, understanding and manage them. If you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage yourself. You can't manage your relationships. You can't manage your money. For example, if you're not emotionally intelligent, you're just going to allow yourself to be led by greed, arrogance, believing you know what's best, or on the other hand, becoming timid and frightened about investing your money and how you invest it. So managing your emotions enables you to be balanced and to be able to make the best possible choices in every area of your life. So we're going to be looking mostly today at the Get Happier School and some of the ideas behind that, where it comes from. And let's start off immediately and ask ourselves, what is the Get Happier School? Here we have some students from a local school nearby, and their school, we'll be seeing images over this series of the posters that have been developed around the school, not only by students, but by the project. So very simply, there it is, a comprehensive social and emotional learning program that brings together the best in practical, positive psychology and effective teaching and learning processes. It's a sequential and developmental program for the first 7 years of school. And what I saw initially was that many people were teaching choice theory to children, but it might have been a short program, but this is actually built in. It's an integral part of the curriculum, which develops in a logical way over all the years they are at school. So let's keep moving. Hang on, let's just see how we get. Here we go. It's also designed to create and sustain a positive, harmonious and flourishing school culture and reach out to the local community. At one of our schools here are the grade 6s, and they create wonderful resources for their teachers. They do all sorts of amazing things like coaching other students, reaching out to the community to help disadvantaged people. And so students at the top end of the primary or elementary school, rather than being seen as a nuisance by their teachers, they've learned choice theory and they're actioning it in all sorts of amazing ways and inspiring ways that are helping the school and the local community. So here we go, folks. And this comes from Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind. He talks about the development of mankind, how we learned to get into the agricultural age, we learned to till the soil, develop small villages. Then we learned to mine the ores from the ground and fabricate metals and build amazing buildings and skyscrapers. And we're right in the middle of this information age where there is so much information out there. The big question is, which information is worth learning? Which information is worth knowing? Because there's so much there. And that's where Daniel Pink says we've got to get onto the right side of the brain, which is all about, as we will see here, it's about meaning. It's about creativity. How do we use this information to create a fantastic world for ourselves and the other people on the planet? What do we invent? What do we create? How do we get the best level of joyfulness, happiness in this world? And how do we learn empathy? How do we learn to connect and understand each other in a way that's going to enhance well-being in the world? On the left-hand side, here's one of our schools in Shenzhen in China, and some of the small children being taught. And so if we follow Daniel Pink's reasoning, what are the key skills that children need to learn if they are to be successful in the world of the future? And this is what we understand, and this is what's understood by educators all around the world. Children need to learn to think laterally, flexibly, and creatively. The COVID crisis has been part of this. How do we manage our lives with the unexpected of the world? We need to be able to think in a very nimble and lateral way in order to survive and thrive, solve problems, and to solve them constructively in a way that's going to be of benefit to you and to other people as well. Understand ourselves, understand themselves, and manage their feelings effectively. Manage relationships and build self-esteem successfully. Choose inspiring, positive, and optimistic lives, and to get happier, even in the face of adversity. Just move this across the screen. So, going here, so why do we need the Get Happier project? Well, first of all, it's very clear in Australia, and I'm sure in the States as well, we are in the middle of a health and mental health epidemic. Effective education, prevention, and treatment are urgently required. The world has changed and our survival and well-being are under greater threat than ever. You don't need me to tell you this. You just switch on the 7 o'clock news and it'll tell you all of this. In spite of a massive increase in scientific and technological knowledge, we are still relating to each other in dangerous and destructive ways. Dr. Glasser points this out in his book, Choice Theory. Many of our schools need support to prepare our young people to learn the skills to flourish in this challenging world, because many teachers have not learnt these skills. They've not been taught this as part of their training. And finally, who doesn't want to get happier? That's the underlying motivation for everything that you and I do. We don't do things to make ourselves more miserable. We always choose what we believe is going to help us feel happier at the time. So if we look at the difference between mental health and mental illness is often defined by painful emotional symptoms using diagnostic criteria. That's how the psychiatric and many of the psychological systems work in our world. It's a deficit-based model, looking at what's wrong, what's not working in people's lives, and the focus is on pathology, from which efforts are made to treat and alleviate symptoms. And on the right-hand side, you'll see one of the cards from the Get Happier Toolkit, which is a great resource for teaching, counselling, and learning about feelings. On the other hand, mental health is not simply the absence of mental illness. It's defined by the World Health Organization as a state of emotional well-being that allows us to achieve our potential and live our lives to the full, even in the face of adversity. And I think so often counselling is focused because people have been through such terrible suffering in their lives, just helping them to get back to some sort of level playing field, which of course is part of the journey. But to be able to get to a point where you can live an inspired and meaningful life is really the goal of what we want to achieve with choice theory. So this focus on mental health and well-being is the most powerful antidote for mental ill health. It's very hard to be miserable when you're happy. It's very hard to be mentally ill when you're unhappy. Well, sorry, happy, I should say. I'm getting mixed up here. So learning these skills for self-esteem, resilience, emotional intelligence provides protective factors against mental illness. So traditionally, there's been that focus on alleviating suffering, which is still important. That's why I just love the psychologists and counsellors and this whole profession, which is based around helping people help themselves learn to move on from some terrible things that happen in their lives. But there's also a growing recognition from these organisations all around the world that we need to support people to stay mentally well and this thus to focus on early intervention. Prevention is really our key priority. Here's Dr. Glasser, and he says it like this. He says, we have to go beyond therapy and focus on prevention. Again, that word, teaching people choice theory. It is teaching, not treatment. And choice theory can be taught to children, to teachers, can be taught to anyone. It's a very simple and fun approach. And when you learn it, your life can never be quite the same again. And again, this is why I'll use this with my clients. I just don't want to help them get over a particular issue. I want to help them to leave my office with a framework to manage future issues that they're going to have in their lives, and with a framework to help themselves get happier. Dr. Glasser's formula, he says mental health equals happiness. And mental health can be seen as a continuum, and we're all moving either up or down on it at any time in our lives. But if we want to live the best life, understanding what will lead to mental health is going to enhance our happiness. And I love this quote from Dr. Glasser's book, looking at mental health as a public health issue. And I'll just point out a few things here that he talks about, what mental health represents. Because in many quarters, you talk about mental health and people are going to be talking about a whole range of mental illnesses. Mental health is totally different. It's what he talks about here. You're enjoying being with most of the people you know, the important people. Generally, you like people. You're someone who's more than willing to help an unhappy person to feel better. And I like this next bit. You lead a mostly tension-free life. You laugh a lot and rarely suffer from the aches and pains that so many people accept as an unavoidable part of living. You enjoy life and have no trouble accepting that other people are different from you. You're not out to change others. You're creative in what you attempt and may enjoy more of your potential than you thought possible. And you and I know that if we're miserable, there's not much creativity there. We're just on survival. And finally, even in difficult situations where you are unhappy, no one can be happy all the time. You'll know why you're unhappy and you'll attempt to do something about it. And that's very much where the Get Happier project. So what do you do about it? And with choice theory, we can provide a framework so anyone at any time can understand a whole range of options that they can choose to get happier. Another guru in terms of happiness is Dr. Martin Seligman, the founder of positive psychology. He talks about life satisfaction. He compares pleasure with life satisfaction. You know, pleasure, you know, it's pretty easy to get. I can go out and buy an ice cream and eat it and I'll feel pleasure. But as Dr. Seligman would point out, I eat 3 or 4 ice creams, I'm going to be quite sick. So he's saying, no, happiness and life satisfaction, you've got to go beyond pleasure. Pleasure is fine, but we habituate to pleasure. We look at drug addicts, for example. That's that same thing, isn't it? They feel they've got to keep getting more and the body habituates to the drug, just like we habituate to food or to coffee or whatever it might be. So Martin Seligman, he says the same as pretty much as Dr. Glasser. What is positive emotion? How do we make sure we get plenty of that in our lives? How do we enhance that? Are we fully engaged in what we do? Are we loving what we do? If we don't, we're not going to be particularly happy. Relationships, again, building good relationships, first of all with yourself and then with others, making sure that you're doing something meaningful and purposeful in your life and actually achieving certain outcomes as a result of all of that. I love this quote by Jackson Brown, who says, happiness is not the absence of problems, but the ability to deal with them. And when we know we have some skills to manage situations, we can approach any situation with confidence, knowing we have the resources to manage it. Another guru in terms of happiness is the Dalai Lama. And he puts it this way, he says, I have a dream that the world will become a really happy human family. And how will it happen? It's going to happen through education, again, through learning, through teaching, the holistic and realistic thinking that we're going to be talking about over the next few sessions. Through education, we can develop the oneness of humanity. How can we expect people to make effective choices if they don't know what choices are available? Many people who come to see me say, Ivan, I don't have a choice. And so as we explore that, we discover, in fact, there are many choices. I put it this way. I say, we expect people to play the game of life without teaching them the rules. It's a bit like a game, isn't it, life? The Get Happier project teaches the guidelines to live a happy, connected and responsible life. So here we were. I was in Singapore a few years ago, and we were working with a number of other, at a big conference, looking at different approaches. And this is the choice theory, the first slide I threw up. And just looking where choice theory is used all around the world. It's been around for many years now. The Journal of Reality Therapy has been operating for 40 years. Dr. Glasser himself, named one of the eminent psychiatrists of the 20th century. It's been used in programs in prisons, with youth, with schools. It's an evidence-based approach as defined by the European Association for Psychotherapy. It's in over 60 countries around the world. We could go on all day talking about the various aspects of choice theory. So what is choice theory? Just very quickly, for those of you who may not be aware of this, it is an evidence-based psychological model for understanding and managing behaviour. It was devised by Dr. Glasser and is used in counselling, coaching, mental health, self-development, education, managing, and in people-based industries all around the world. And it proposes a very significant shift in our understanding of relationships and managing conflict. It has profound implications for mental health and well-being, which we'll be exploring during this series. And for further information, read the book Choice Theory by Dr. Glasser. And there's Dr. Glasser's mission. And it's not to counsel the world to choice theory, it's to teach the world choice theory. And as an effective counsellor, we need to teach people this information. It's information they don't have, and that's why they're coming to see us. And here we are. Here I am with Dr. Glasser in 2012, just some time before he passed on. And this is what he and Carleen said. The Get Happier School program is truly remarkable. And this is before we developed large sections of it. Doug Dragster will captivate, entertain, and teach valuable information that will transform lives. So the Get Happier project utilises the choice theory framework to give children the emotional intelligence skills they need to survive and thrive in a time of exponential change. So there's Dr. Glasser's book, Choice Theory book, being translated via the Get Happier project into all the components of the car, which is something everyone in every culture can understand because the car is such a ubiquitous image. So it provides this powerful, simple and comprehensive framework to teach these skills in school based on that car image. It's based on stories, narratives and images. They bypass academic language and conceptual barriers and makes choice theory available to everyone. Why is this so important now? And here we go. I don't need to tell you this. I'll flick through this very quickly. And in many countries and places, this is greater. 1 in 4 young people have experienced this level of extreme mental ill health in the past 12 months. In any classroom, that's 5 or 6 children. That's a lot of children you're dealing with. 4 in 10 teachers report very high levels of occupational stress. I was working in a school recently and a person put their hand up and said, Ivan, that's not true. He said it's closer to 8 or 9 in 10 in this school. Now, what have we got here? We've got traumatised children. We've got stressed teachers. And what sort of environment is this for learning and developing the skills for happiness? Here's another one. Up to 80% of parents in Western countries still believe and practice the act of smacking their children. And that's manifest in things like this here, family violence, the biggest killer of women, aged 14 to 44 in Australia. Double this figure for Aboriginal women. And having worked with such people for many years, again, I've been driven to consider how can we help change this culture? And it's only, as the Dalai Lama, as Dr. Glasser says, it's through teaching these powerful ideas. So how do we teach these skills for a happier life? Here we are in a boxing gym, and these young men love the Get Happier project because it teaches them the mindsets and skills to be most effective in their sport. So we use the school curriculum guides. We teach it progressively through the stories and the fun activities. And why do we use stories? And here's the importance of mental models. And here's Dr. Pamela Rutledge from Media Psychology Research Centre. And she says this way: stories are how we think. They are how we make meaning of life. Call them schemas, scripts, cognitive maps, mental models, metaphors, or narratives. It's how we do everything in our lives. So to have a clear narrative and story as a basis for understanding what we do is absolutely essential. And it being an intentional narrative as well, not just the narratives that come drifting in from outside. And so here's the metaphor. The journey of life is the mind map behind the Get Happier School. And the dragsters travel through a whole range of adventures to discover how they can get happier and deal with problems and challenges them in their life. So we're tapping into an archetype, in effect, as old as life itself. It's understood intuitively across cultures. And this shared mental model provides the context for the program. And here we go. Roadmaps, roads and dragsters set the scene for a journey of discovery and adventure. And here's one of the mind maps, the road maps the children use to understand the different parts, the components they can understand in order to get happier. And here's a huge floor chart. Some schools use this as a flag, which is a depiction of the car travelling the roads. And I can get any 8 or 9-year-old student in a school and put the chart on the floor and say, tell me the 7 ways we can use to get happier if we're unhappy. And they'll say, Ivan, you travel on the open roads, you avoid the dead-end roads. If you're having trouble with your feelings, you get on the front wheels, you change your thoughts and your actions. If your car's not running too well, you look at which needs are not being met and ask yourself, what do I need more of right now, and do something about it. You make sure you're in the driver's seat. You're not trying to drive someone else's car or allowing someone to drive yours. You've got a good grip on the steering wheel. You know where you're going. You know why you're going there. And if you're in trouble, you drive around to look at it from another angle through the windshield or the windscreen. And if you need some questions, you look at the road signs down the bottom to ask yourself the questions, the important questions you need answered. So as I started to teach choice theory around the world, and now I've taught on 6 continents, and I've been so delighted at how people love the pictures, because, as we say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Dr. Glasser says, the quality of world pictures, that's how we think in pictures. And so my first foray into the publishing world was the Cars R Us kit, which many people are familiar with. It's been a bestseller for the commercial company that runs that. And as I taught it, people would ask me these sorts of questions, and things like, I wish I'd known this when I was a child. It could have changed my life. Can you create something so I can teach my children? I wish there was something like that in schools. So eventually I sold my private practice. I still do a little bit of work from home, and embarked on this journey of developing a program to teach choice theory to the world. So what is it we teach? We're teaching it this practical, evidence-based psychology of choice theory, happiness, high performance and well-being. Here are some children in a school in Slovenia, if you could read Slovenia, and of course you'd understand that. And you see the games that they're playing there. Here's the 4 wheels of the car, and we have a lot of fun. I train my adult trainees like this as well. When is the optimal time to teach it? We teach it, of course, at any life stage. We teach it to people who are dying. It's fascinating the impact that has on people when they understand these ideas. But for maximum effect, we teach it before puberty, when children are really open to learning. Here's our friend Karcher in one of the schools in Los Angeles, where we trialled the program back in 2011. And here's our first school trial at Loyola Village School, Bradley Smith and Karcher and the team from the university who did our first trial. Here we are in Singapore. We're integrating choice theory with the Get Happier project and helping people see the different layers of understanding we can actually add to our understanding of how to get happier. I use this wherever I go. Recently, I was working in an Indigenous area of Australia, and people love this type of idea. And of course, they translate it into their own language. And here are a couple of powerful Indigenous images painted by one of our workshop people to demonstrate and to illustrate, I guess, what we're trying to teach. So very quickly, because I think we must be getting near the end of our session now, give me another 2 or 3 minutes, Mona, and I'll just get to some sort of final spot here today. For the infant school, we have the Ready, Set, Go program. Again, activities, games, wall charts. We'll have a bit of a look at those through the program. Then we move on to Life's an Adventure in grade 2 and 3, using storybooks and a whole range of journals. Again, games, activities, discussion, reflection, writing, art, construction, reading. It integrates across the whole curriculum. Next 2 grades, we go on to the Magic in Life, and here we use the Dragsters Magic Book, which is a book full of cartoons and games that you use to teach them. And finally, as I said with the grade 6 earlier, they get onto the Get Happier in Action project book, where following Bloom's taxonomy and levels of understanding, they're able to implement the ideas in a practical and unique way in their school. Here's the first storybook that I wrote, and that's the one that's used as the basis for the 2-3 grade. And here's the journal that they use, as you see, full of activities and parts that children can write in to start to understand and deal with a whole range of issues, because really that's what we're focused on: independence and responsibility. That's how we get to be happier. As Dr. Glasser has said, the more responsible you are for your life, the happier you're going to be. Here's the Magic Book, and as you can see, you get a bit of a sense of the cartoons that are in there. The toolbox card set, again, which is a key part of the program as well. It's been designed so anyone can discover these ways to manage their lives. There's 3 sets of cards. The Open and Dead End Roads, about improving confidence and relationships, which align to the habits that Dr. Glasser talks about. The 4 Wheels to Get Happier cards, which are fun, simple, visual approaches to understand and manage feelings, solve problems. And then the Supercharge Your Dragster. If you want to get the best out of life, do you want to live a supercharged life or just an average, ordinary, dull life? This gives you the skills and the questions to make sure you get there. Just some examples of some of those cards. Here's the Magic Book with some of the, and here's some of the posters. And maybe we'll get time to look at more of these during our following sessions, Mona. And again, understanding, here are the sort of visual images children can use to adjust their lives and get the best out of them. Part of the school program involves a parenting book. Every parent gets this for free. And in fact, if you get in before the end of the year, you can actually download this for free yourself. It's full of free downloads, visual downloads. You can put on your wall, refrigerators. You can all get audio downloads and copy pretty much all of it. And while I'm there, what is the coupon code on the website is Free Happy Parenting Book, all one word. So if you want to get in and get that book before the end of the year, just use that code, Free Happy Parenting Book, all one word. A final word to the Deputy Premier of our state, who's visited one of our Get Happier schools, and he's made it very clear that in education these days, if we look at the last bit of his quote, their goal is to ensure that the overall well-being of children and young people is as high a priority as literacy and numeracy. In other words, no point in being literate and numerate if you don't know how to get happy, because we know the unhappy people in our world are the ones that go on to be involved in the sad and unhappy side of life, the criminal side. You can't meet your needs in a constructive way. You just do what's going to come easiest to you. And finally for today, do get onto the website, www.gethappier.net. Look at the Get Happier project on Facebook. You can contact me and certainly download that parenting book. I've talked a bit too long today, Mona, for which I apologise. So I'll bring it to a close there and come back to see you. I'll stop this share.
Well, thank you. That was very informative and has a lot of resources for our audience to check into. And from the very beginning until the ending, I keep hearing you say again and again and again that if you're having fun, it's leading you toward getting happier. And the happier you get, the more meaningful your life becomes.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's a question too. Does meaning become before happiness, or does happiness come before meaning? And of course, it's all intertwined, Mona, isn't it? So,
Yes.
finding our way to an inspiring life it's not going to be found just by seeking pleasure constantly. And I think the difference between pleasure and happiness is a key concept here, isn't it? Because understanding that is absolutely critical to understanding this. And I love Dr. Glass's quote, you know, the more responsible you are, the more likely you are to be happy. Whereas often happiness and fun can be portrayed by the media as just out having a good time and doing something in your spare time, I suppose, just so you can bear the boredom and ongoing challenge of your daily life.
So it's the more responsible you are for your own life, for your own thoughts, your own interactions, then the happier and the more content we can become.
Yes, as I say, you know, you don't get happy by expecting others to make you happy. No one's out there is going to make us happy. You know, our friends love us and care for us, but they've got their problems and issues. They're not going to be there telling us what to think and do. And as you're saying, it's personal responsibility, which, of course, is the heart of choice theory, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. It is. And the fact that you use a little car character, it's someone you can, it's something, it's very meaningful that you can relate with, while at the same time seeing that it's a concept that then I can take and embrace in my own life.
That's right. And again, we use the car very purposefully, Mona, because what happens is the children project themselves onto the car.
Exactly.
And so it's a third person. You can feel safe. This is what the car is feeling. And this makes the whole counselling and learning process very safe for young people, because as you understand, I'm sure, Mona, you know, young people and adults as well too, disclosing things which are painful to us, we don't like to do it. We feel our ego may suffer a bit. But when you can project your feelings onto something outside yourself, all of a sudden you feel safe. And it's amazing the information people and children will give you when they're able to do that. And something which conventional face-to-face auditory talk counselling simply cannot do, which was another of the driving forces behind me focusing on the pictures, because I guess finding that traditional approaches to counselling, which focused on the auditory channels, just listening and talking, all very good for many people, but to use all channels, the kinesthetic, the visual as well, really enriches that whole process. And I find I get so much more information. And at the end of a session, people are saying, I can't believe I've shared that with you. So, yeah.
Because it's safe.
It's safe, exactly. And without the safety, we've got nothing, Mona, have we?
Right. So as we learn these new mindsets and skills, and I absolutely love the fact that you equated it with the archetype that is part of our collective consciousness.
Absolutely.
And then the children and adults both can put that on a little car that we can see it from a distance. So therefore we're taking it more seriously rather than personally.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We're sort of saying this is so much integrated to the way we are and the way we think, Mona. It's part of, as you're saying, that collective unconscious and the journey of life and the means by which we travel that journey. It's the essence, really, of our existence and meaning for our life, isn't it? You know, we arrive as little babies in the world and we move on, we get a bit older, and then we exit the world. And so that journey that we're on, how can we make that meaningful, inspiring, happy, and particularly in the face of the challenges that we're going to be faced with? And certainly that metaphor of the hero's journey, Mona, is such a key part of this, which we teach as well. And to understand that that's the way life is. We're cruising along, enjoying the scenery, then all of a sudden we turn a corner and the world has changed. And how do we cope with this new changed world? How do we learn from this? How do we grow? And how do we come back stronger, more resilient, more inspired, going to the next level? It's great, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It is. So I thank you very, very much. Also, something else that I really enjoyed hearing was occasionally you kept saying that we'll do something else here and help teach you some more concepts. So I thank you for that. Yes. So we will go ahead and close out for today. And those of you that are watching live, stay here. And after we stop the recording, you're welcome to give some comments or ask additional questions. And in the meantime, thank you for being with us, and good mental health, and get happier.
Thank you, Mona. I look forward to our next session in the series here where I can actually explain how this works in schools.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Goodbye.